Hey there, good people. It's your Crippled Critic, and this week I'm going to talk to you about a game called Bound. So, Bound is a game that's kind of hard to describe, and it's better just to experience for yourself. It's an art piece, really, beautiful yet complex. The world in the game and the overall look is just strange and abstract. The story itself is open to interpretation. Though at its core, Bound is a 3D platformer with some puzzles thrown in and a main focus on narrative. Bound was made by a game company called Plastic, which resides in Poland. The lead director was a man named Michal Staniszewski. Yeah, I'm probably gonna butcher that. I remember the studio doing another experimental game back on the PS3 called Linger and Shadow. I was honestly a big fan of Linger and Shadow, even though it was kind of overpriced for what it was, and yeah, it was strange, but it had an awesome soundtrack and was just super weird. But the thing is, it was more of an interactive movie, and Bound has a lot more gameplay to it. If there's one main thing I can say Bound is about, it's dance. Dancing takes up a lot of the game. You dance to interact with the world, and more specifically, you dance to protect yourself from enemies. A lot of research was done by the creative team at Plastic to really nail the movements of a ballet dancer. And it looks amazing. The movements are just fluid and very authentic for sure. Aside from ballet, the creative team was also inspired by the movements in figure skating and gymnastics. Even the main character is played by a real-life ballet dancer, Udod, who did some impressive motion capture for the game. The dancing never feels like a tacked-on mechanic. It's super fun, and it really sets the game apart visually. So let me get into the controls of the game. As far as options, there aren't many, and it isn't a game that has customizable controls. Still, the game is really simple, and I think altogether, you'll only be pressing about 3 buttons in the whole game. There's a few little things you can change, like lowering the volume and the camera. You can invert the camera and change the sensitivity. Just a heads up, the camera can be kind of temperamental. When I was playing it, it was hard to control. I noticed that even when I was standing still, the camera kept moving. The camera was so sensitive that I actually thought it had something to do with motion control, but I don't think the game has motion control, so I think it's just really sensitive. I recommend lowering the camera sensitivity way down. This is also the only game that has a really strange feature that has it so when you move the camera, it directly affects objects in the game. What I mean is, the main character is never hidden from view. This can be helpful, but sometimes it also means that the objects you come in contact with can fall apart because it's not just a visual aid, it really does fall apart. If you're not careful, you can fall through the ground or fall through a wall if your angle is just so. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind. There's also kind of a cool feature called an edge guard in the game, and protects you from walking off an edge of anything. You can still fall by jumping over or off of something, but this will protect you from just walking off something. It's pretty cool, and it can be turned off and on. Like I said, the gameplay is really simple. X is jump, circle is roll, and most importantly, R2 is dance. Like usual, you move with the left stick and turn the camera with the right stick. Square is kind of used as a dodge function, but circle kind of does the same thing. These are the main buttons in the game, and even though the game tries to tell you that other buttons can be used to help facilitate different dance moves, none of them are actually required to press. The only other button that has a main function is L2, and if you hold it down, it's used to run. I can tell you right now though, I played through the whole game, and not once did I have to run when playing. And that's good, because for me, holding L2 was kind of difficult. But yeah, you never have to run in the game. It's because of this that I think disabled gamers with fine motor skill impairments shouldn't have much trouble playing. Though I feel like I should mention that you can gain this thing, it's like a long jump, and to activate it you roll and then immediately press X. It took a little bit for me to get the hang of, but it's pretty simple, and you really don't ever have to use it except maybe once or twice. There's a lot of platforming in the game, and collecting these little blue things called memory shards, although collecting them is entirely optional. There are plenty of puzzles in the game, very simple, and mostly just pressing the right lever or hitting a pedestal at just the right moment. Just a heads up, it's rare, but there are timed puzzles in the game. Again, you don't ever have to run during these puzzles, and in my experience, pressing this roll button, which is a circle, is a good substitute. Rolling is a great way to move quickly without running. To get past most obstacles, however, you'll be doing the dance mechanic. You can dance whenever you like to, at any point in the game. You have to hold down R2 to dance, and once you do, a protective circle of ribbons appear around you and lasts about 30 seconds whether you're dancing or not. The barrier protects you from harm, as there are things that can hurt you in the game or stop you from moving forward. You can also die in the game, but the game doesn't really penalize you for this, as you seem to have infinite lives. When you die, the game just transports you back to the last place you were. It's obvious that the game autosaves constantly, which is nice. Occasionally, Bound will try to switch things up and give you some different kinds of gameplay mechanics, which I guess is what you'd call stealth sections, but these are really simple and you can even bypass them completely by just dancing. I do appreciate the variety though. If there is a flaw with the gameplay, I think it's with the branching paths. Now, Bound is already a very linear game, but there are places where you can go that aren't on the exact path that you're supposed to go, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're shortcuts, but other times they're actually these paths that are meant for something called a speedrun mode, which you can only access after you beat the game once. They aren't very obvious though, and on my first playthrough, I actually went down one of these and got stuck. Now I've heard that it's very rare for this to happen, but it did happen to me, so I think I should mention it, and I really couldn't go any further once I went down this path. It sort of locks you in, and I had to start the whole game over again, which kind of sucked. I mean, thankfully the game is really simple and fun to play, so I didn't mind it too much, but it did happen, and I just think it could have been avoided if the game offered you a better way to restart the level. There is a leveled selection of sorts in the game, but like the story, it's vague and not very straightforward. In fact, I'm sure a lot of gamers will probably miss it if they're not careful. It's mostly just hard to know when you're actually using it because it's not really labeled or anything. Not too bad, and I mean, it is a glitch, and hopefully they'll patch it later. On the audio side of things, disabled gamers with hearing impairment shouldn't have any trouble playing Bound. There aren't any subtitles that you can turn off and on, but that's okay because the game has automatic subtitles that pop up on black background with nice white font during cutscenes. When there is dialogue, which is rare, it's in this unintelligible babble, so it shouldn't be difficult to understand for anyone who can't hear. I guess you'll be missing out on a really cool soundtrack, but music doesn't affect the gameplay at all. On a side note, the soundtrack does fit really well with the game. It can sound kind of ambient to classical or even electronic. There are parts that have this heavy synthesizer and it really makes it feel like it's building to something. Gamers with visual impairments should do fine in this game. This time around, I took screenshots of the game and put them through a filter that was supposed to help me understand what it would look like if I were colorblind, and I didn't notice any problems. I mean, I do think that colorblind players will definitely have a different experience when they're playing Bound because the game has lots of bright reds and blues, so it'll look very different and maybe it's a little strange, but it should be fine as far as like going through the game because there's nothing that should stop you from getting anywhere. At times there are red or blue trails that point you in the direction you're supposed to go, but they're always above something white or dark gray, so it should be easy to see whether you know the color or not. Visually, the only problem I could find is that certain parts of the game have like a cluttered screen, and I don't mean like on your HUD because there isn't a HUD display in the game, but objects will come flying at you at times, and at times it can be sort of hard to see where you're going. There's a particular part of the game that has these giant purple orbs that sort of act like mini planets. When you jump on them, they have their own gravitational pull. And sometimes the perspective change could like make you feel a little dizzy. It made me feel dizzy, and I'm not usually sensitive to those kind of things. So fair warning. So the story is complex, like I said, and I really think it's better if you experience it for yourself. But I'll try to give my personal idea of what it is. So, spoiler warning. So briefly at the beginning of the game, you're actually playing in a more realistic setting. You play a pregnant woman who appears to be looking through her memories and just picking out what she finds, positive or negative about them. Her memories are what you experience when you're going through the levels. At the end of each level, you'll experience a memory that works different than most of the game, as you are in first person suddenly, and has you walking around a dark room. As you walk around the room, the memory comes into focus, and you're given a much better understanding of the main character's childhood. At least that's what I see. People who've played Linger and Shadow should recognize this mechanic, although in Bound, it's a lot more straightforward and doesn't have the pesky motion controls. Keep in mind, this game has a lot of symbolism and not much dialogue, so players will definitely see things differently. And even though the game is rated E10 and up, the creator himself said that people who are under 21 probably wouldn't understand the story fully. The world is so fun to look at though, it's really trippy and you can get lost in it. I got lost quite often when I played Bound, and I don't just mean walking around. So many times I forgot where I was or what was happening or even what I was standing on because the worlds are so strange looking. A lot of times I wouldn't even know which way was up, literally. Although I really think this is a positive thing, I think it added to the odd atmosphere. The creators have said that the levels in the game are inspired by modern art and something called concretism, which apparently is a form of abstract art, except it alludes to entities and objects that aren't normally found in the real world, which I definitely see. One of my favorite levels has something that appears to be an endless staircase, which definitely reminds me of this famous painting called Relativity by M.C. Escher. I'm sure this is intentional. Some levels of the game even felt like they were inspired by another indie game called Journey, with these long surfing-like sections that showed off the visuals nicely. I mean, even if these segments were inspired by Journey, I really don't think a game like Bound could ever have been made if it wasn't for Journey. I guess because Journey was one of those games that kind of paved the way for those artistic games that had a little bigger budget, and proving that they could be successful too. So I love this game. Bound is definitely going to be one of my favorite games, especially on this generation of consoles. It's one of those games though that people either love or hate, because it just has minimal gameplay and can be a little too weird maybe for some, but I loved it. And I'm one of those people that really believe that video games can be art, and no other game kind of embodies that idea more than Bound. If you're in a relaxed mood, this is a game that'd be perfect to lay back and play. I also feel like Bound is a game that I think everyone should play at least once in their lifetime. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.